Welcome back to the Veteran Teacher Files. I'm your host, the Dragon Lady, a veteran teacher with over 25 years in education. And as always, names, places, and identifying details are changed because around here, we keep things anonymous. Today's episode started because my husband asked me a simple question. He asked, "So when do kids start using Chromebooks now?" And I told him, kindergarten. Usually in kindergarten, a student will get a Chromebook to share and keep in the classroom. And then usually by first grade, a student will get their own individual Chromebook. And then my husband just kind of stared at me for a second. Now, to be fair, we're older parents. He graduated high school in 1995, and I started teaching in 2005. So the thought of our soon-to-be kindergartner using Chromebooks, and then pretty soon after that having her own individual Chromebook, yeah, that's really different from what we're used to or how we grew up in school. So I started teaching in 2005, and even between then and now, things are different. When I started teaching, I was trying to fight other teachers for an overhead projector. Do you remember those things? And I had one of the good ones. I had one with the side rolly thing. It never really rolled correctly when I needed it to, but it was still pretty cool. And if the bulb blew out, no big deal. I just used the whiteboard. And if I really had to, no big deal. I had a DVD of Schoolhouse Rock that I could pop into my DVD player. Unfortunately, though, the TV that was anchored to the corner ceiling didn't work. It was big, it was bulky, it was just hanging there, and it had this random picture of George Bush taped to the front of it. So, yeah. That's what technology kind of looked like when I started teaching. It was exciting back then. My classroom had a giant desktop computer that didn't really work. I'm not really sure what I used it for besides like the once a quarter report card thing that I had to do. I had speakers that crackled like fast food drive-through speakers. And I had 3 or 4 Mac computers in a corner. The big ones, the ones that were like orange and blue. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I was like top of the line. I had technology. And my site had a computer lab, and that place was sacred. Kids would line up like they were entering Disneyland. And we did have the internet back then. The internet was slow though. It was so slow you could submit attendance, grade papers, call a parent, and rethink your life choices all before a web page loaded. So yeah. Over the years, technology exploded. I remember document cameras coming out, doc cams, and then smart boards. Remember those? Those were actual boards that were like mounted onto the wall, and you had to use special markers on them. Then we had one-to-one devices, and then Chromebooks. And then suddenly every child had a screen. And at first, I remember being thrilled. I'm not really a paper person anyways. I am an older millennial, and I'm pretty digital. This is the future. And some of the stuff we're using is really amazing. I mean, as technology evolved, my students could do research instantly, and I could differentiate lessons faster. And if I had a student who struggled with writing, he could type. And the programs became interactive. I found real benefits, and I know other teachers did too. But somehow along the way, the pendulum swung hard. And now students spend most of their entire school day on screens. Assignments are online. Reading is online. Tests, not just the big test. Spelling tests are given online. Fluency tests are given online. Math games? Online. Even brain breaks are somehow still online. And that dependence really showed itself back in February. So, back in February of this year, the site where I'm currently working at had a storm. Well, not just the site. The city where I live had a big storm. And the site that I'm working at had its power knocked out. Now, because the power was out, the internet was out. And suddenly, we were kind of stuck. Now, the power was out long enough that we had to notify parents to come pick up their kids. But because the internet was down, we couldn't email anybody. We couldn't message anybody. There was no way to contact parents. At some point, an admin had to drive to a nearby Starbucks just to send a message out to parents to come pick up their kids. That's the moment I realized just how dependent schools have become on technology. At this point, if the Wi-Fi goes down, the entire educational system enters a state of mourning. You can physically feel the panic spread through the building. Teachers started looking around like, so now what do we do? So, this is where things get complicated. I don't know how many teachers are openly asking if kids are actually learning better, but I know I am. I've been in education long enough to notice something. I've noticed that the ELA graphs aren't changing. The graphs look the same in 2005 as they did in 2015, as they do now, even after the pandemic. The same subgroups at the bottom. ELA is still a subject that we're struggling with. The averages haven't really changed. But we've added more technology, more programs, more platforms, more interventions, more testing, more data tracking. And yet we're still having a lot of the same problems and a lot of the same conversations that we've been having for years since we started tracking the data. That's the uncomfortable part. Education loves trends. Every few years, somebody shows up with a new platform, a new app, a new acronym, and a PowerPoint presentation with way too many transitions. And suddenly, everybody's supposed to reinvent teaching again. Meanwhile, teachers are sitting there quietly thinking, some of these kids still think main idea is a person. Now, I'm not anti-technology. I use technology every day. Quite a bit, actually. But I do think we get confused between engagement and entertainment. A child clicking buttons doesn't automatically mean they're learning deeply. Sometimes it just means they found the sound effects. And teachers know this. We assign work online, and suddenly one kid is secretly playing games, another's watching like soccer highlights, somebody's trying to order Croc Charms, and somehow some kid has like 47 tabs open, there's music playing, and he doesn't know where it's coming from. Yeah, if you're a teacher, I know you're nodding your head in agreement. But the bigger issue isn't even the academics. It's what all this constant digital stimulation is doing to our kids emotionally. Again, I've been in the classroom for a while, and today's students are overwhelmed. Please listen to me when I say everything is faster, everything is louder, and everything demands attention immediately. Now that pressure follows them home too. Social media, notifications, messages, videos, trends. There's no quiet time anymore. When I was younger, an embarrassing moment stayed local. If you did something awkward at school, maybe like 14 people saw it. But now, a kid can go viral before lunch. And that changes kids. Schools are starting to realize that more screen time isn't automatically healthier or smarter. Some districts are even beginning to reduce Chromebook usage because teachers are noticing shorter attention spans, more anxiety, less face-to-face interaction, and students struggling to focus without constant stimulation. Because some of the most meaningful moments I've ever had as a teacher involved absolutely zero technology. No apps, no devices, no screens, just connection. There's one moment I still think about. Back when I was teaching and also in grad school, my thesis focused on early literacy. I was collecting data, tracking student growth, studying phonemic awareness, phonics development, all of it. And because of that research, I started noticing something important. The students making the biggest gains were my focus students. The kids I was sitting down with in small groups. The kids I was working with one-on-one. The kids whose needs I actually had time to meet personally. Those kids were closing gaps in phonemic awareness. They were finally making phonics connections, and they were growing. Not because of some flashy program, because I was sitting beside them consistently. We slowed down, we talked, we practiced, and we built trust. I got to know them as people, not just data points on some spreadsheet. And something else became very clear too. When I told those students good job, it mattered way more than when a computer program said it, because human connection carries weight. A child knows the difference between correct answer detected and a real adult telling you, I'm proud of you. And after 25 years in education, one thing still holds true. Kids will forget the app. They will forget the program. And they'll forget the login password immediately, repeatedly, every single day. But they remember how adults made them feel. That part never changed. Not in 2005, and not now. And maybe the real question isn't how much technology should schools use? Maybe the better question is, how do we make sure technology never replaces human connection? Because at the end of the day, relationships still matter more than devices. Maybe the most powerful thing in a classroom is still a teacher sitting beside a student saying, let's figure this out together. Thank you for spending time with me today on the Veteran Teacher Files. I'm your host, the Dragon Lady. Now I want to hear from you. What's one piece of old school teaching you think schools should bring back? Or do you think technology has made classrooms better overall? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this episode resonated with you, make sure to follow, subscribe, and share the Veteran Teacher Files with someone who remembers when a TV strapped to a cart was basically a school celebrity. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.